done today. Just got a couple of small ceilings to do. Nothing too major. Let's have a quick look at them, shall we? So as you can see, it's quite a small ceiling. There's a bit of minor texture on there. I haven't been up, but it's probably I haven't got lots of paint on there. And you can see where I've turned the light on, there's a bit of a sheen to that. See that reflection? It's going to indicate to me that that's got a silk paint on there. So that probably means there's going to be hardly any suction on this at all. So this ceiling's going to sit around for ages. There's a couple of nasty cracks that we're going to get some scrims on. This one's not too bad. Oh, around the edge it's got some quite nasty coving when it's that high density foam stuff. So we need to be careful when we're going up against that with the trowels not to damage that because it's not very strong. So yeah, first things on this one, get the scrims up and then give it a PVA, let the PVA pick up and it'll be ready to rock and roll. This one on the other hand is a little bit different and it's in a bit more of a bad condition. It doesn't, I don't think that is an Artex, so I don't know what that is on there, but we're gonna scrape back the higher points. It looks like somebody's tried to fill a crack through there. So we're gonna scrim these up. Again, looking at the state of these ceilings, and because there's hardly any suction at all, what we're probably going to do is knock up the first coat. We're going straight over with multi-finish. So we'll knock up the first coat, a little bit stiffer maybe, and if we've got some dirty water from yesterday, we might put that in just to speed it up a little bit. And then it's going to be one of those where we need to get the first coat on, give it a couple of flattens and let that first coat pick up quite a lot. More so than you would normally, so it can really hold itself together. And then when we put the second coat on, it'll be a nice tight regulated coat all over that base coat. What's going to happen is we put the first coat on and it's going to sag, and I'm assuming we're going to have to bend this around. It's not going to be straight at all. So yeah, we're going to have to put that first coat on, let it pick right up so it's got the strength to hold itself together. Because what will happen if you put the first coat on wet and then flat in and try and put another coat over it too quickly, then what's going to happen is you're just adding more weight and more sagginess to the plaster whilst it's in that wet condition, and it's going to be a lot harder to trowel up. So like I say, in this case, get the first coat on, give it a couple of trowels, let it pick right up so it can hold itself and not sag when you put that extra bit of weight of the second coat on. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward, small job. We've got a couple of little bits of making good around the place, but yeah, so we'll get on with that. Okay, so as you can see, just giving it a very light scrape just to take the worst of those lumps off. And got some fibre tape, some scrim tape over the cracks. That was a bit loose there, so I took time just to pop that off, and you can see that's bare plaster underneath there. Doesn't seem to be any distemper or anything. So yeah, so the next thing to do is just give this a PVA and let that PVA pick right up and we're ready to go. And just another point is to remember, if you do need to scrim up on something like this, it's best to do the scrimming before the PVA, because when we put the PVA up, it's going to glue the scrims up there. If you try to do it the other way around, then the scrim just won't stick to wet PVA, and you'll have to let that PVA go off before you can get that scrim to stay up there. And remember, again, in this case, because the ceiling's been painted so many times and it's very old, the reason we're putting PVA or SBR, whatever bonding agent solution you want to use, the reason we're putting that on is to actually physically glue the plaster to the ceiling. We're not trying to kill any suction here. The suction on this ceiling and on the other one is going to be non-existent, and it's really going to hang. So yeah, we're just PVAing it just so it glues to that painted surface there. Okay, someone's giving it the big one about getting your scrims up before your PVA. And on ceilings like this, I think you bet your bottom dollar you'll miss one. And look, there's one there. And when you're actually PVAing, that's when you actually notice it. So you think, oh, bloody hell, you know what I mean? So what I'm going to do is, remember that's there. that crack. There's a couple I've missed, and like I say, when you PVA and you go over, you're like, oh, there's a crack on this, I didn't scrim it up. Now it's a pain because it's wet with PVA and I can't scrim it. So what I'm probably going to do is get my stapler out, get some scrim over that before I forget about it, and staple the scrim to the actual ceiling, which isn't a bad idea to do really. This one's not too bad, but if you've got a lot of texture and you're going to have a bit more weight than usual on your first coat, it's a good idea to get some staples up. I wasn't too worried about any because I knew the PVA would pick up and hold the scrims up. But yeah, get some staples into them scrims, because sometimes if it's really, really deep, the weight of the plaster before it sets, when it's wet, the end of the scrim will go and it'll go all the way across the ceiling, and then you'll have this scrim be laying on the floor with a big channel that you need to re-scrim and fill back up, which is a real nightmare. So you only need that to happen to you a couple of times before you work out what you need to do to stop that from happening. So yeah, I'm going to get my stapler out and I'm just going to put some staples in these scrims just to make them stay up. So there's the stapler I use. This one's obviously made by Stanley. You can see the design, it's much heavy duty. DeWalt do some, Fat Max, whatever, but that general design are the best ones. You can get the little silver ones and they're small and they're just not as good. These, because sometimes you get plaster and PVA in them and everything, we keep them WD-40'd up, makes them work a lot better. But this style of heavy duty stapler combined with 10mm staples, you don't want 8mm, don't give you enough purchase. 12mm were just a little bit too big, so if you need to go for a bead or something like that, they tend to crumple up. 10mm in length bead staples seem to be the perfect ones. It's just enough purchase and they're sturdy enough to get through beads and bits of metal and stuff like that. So yeah, this is what I use and it doesn't mess about. Straight in. Yeah, if you cheap out with your stapler, you're going to be messing around quite a bit. So yeah, these are the most reliable ones I've found. Okay, another small thing that you can pay attention to. So this ceiling didn't have a silk paint on it. And then I've been touching it, I can feel that that PVA is almost dry to the touch. This one, which had the silk on it, still, look how shiny that is, that PVA. I've put as tight as I could with the PVA on it, and I've opened the window to get a draft through it to try and send it off a little bit. But that shows you the difference in the suctions you can get. So this ceiling, ideally, is going to be the first one that goes on because it's going to take ages to go off. That one's much drier. So that's just showing you the different suction rates we got on these two ceilings. So it's good quite often to pay attention to what's happening when you start PVAing up. Okay, so we got here pretty much, got out of the van at 8 o'clock this morning. It's now 20 to 10. This ceiling, which had the silk on it, is still slightly wet with PVA, but it's just about ready to go. Another little point to remember, if you are going over a PVA, you really do need that PVA to pick up a little bit, because if you try to go over PVA when it's soaking wet, the plaster's just going to slide all over it and it's going to mix with the plaster and it's going to be a nightmare. So it's well worth letting that PVA pick right up. Don't rush it and try and get on there too quick when it's soaking. Okay, for this one that's a little bit heavier textured, look, we've just, it's a small ceiling. We've just knocked up a bag for now. We'll knock up another bag and use the dirty water, but it's just a little bit thicker than usual, okay? Because it's gonna go on thicker, and if you're, you know, a little bit inexperienced with plastering, if it's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit easier to control with the hawk and trowel. But we're not going to go into one with showing you loads of slow motion shots of me actually putting the stuff on. That's the sort of thing you can't really teach, you just get the hang of it. So we're just going to whack this on and then we're going to have a look at it after that. Okay, so literally all I've done is throw this on. Not turned back and flatten in or anything just yet. It's better to get a quick half decent coat over the entirety of your ceiling or your wall, whatever you're doing, and then turn straight back and trying to flatten it in. Then let's have a look what's going on. Look at all these air bubbles and everything. Look at that, there's a lot going on there. And you can see, because the ceiling's all bending up and down all over the place, you see all the different sporadic movements I've had to make with the trowel to try and flatten them out as best I can and how I see fit, and all the while trying to keep this coving line nice and straight. Now you're going to get some down on the coving, but what I'm more worried about is the actual line of the plaster to the ceiling. I'm not worried about anything that's come down onto the lip of the coving there at this moment. We can deal with that in a few moments. So all these trowel marks are showing me where the ceiling needs a bit more attention. Now bearing in mind, I'm using a 20-inch carbon steel trowel, which is really straight. There's no bend in it at all. It's a really straight trowel. The hawk I'm using is a 16-inch. Now, if you're in a position and you're interested in getting things flat as well as smooth, then if you're not using a carbon steel trowel, you need to start using one. They're a lot harder to work with, but if you put on with it and you start flattening in with it, when you come to trowel up at the end, your work will be so much flatter and so much easier to trowel up, and it just gives you a better quality. Simple as that. You don't have to use a 20. I use this thing day in, day out, so I'm well used to it. You can quite easily drop down to a 16 and just compare the sizes there, which again, carbon steel, really straight, really tough. And you'll also be able to get them in a 40 and 4 3/4, so it's a little bit thinner, the 4 3/4, so it's less strain on your wrist. And you can get them in 18s as well. You can get them in 18 by 4s, and you can get them in 18 by 5s. So there you go. So right, before I talk too much, and this is put in a little bit, I'm going to run over it again with my 20, and we're going to have another look at it then. So it's been literally 5 minutes. I've just flown over it again with the 20-inch carbon steel, and see, I've managed to eliminate a lot of those trowel marks now. And this is, like I say, where these carbons come in to play and make things as flat as they can be. Because they talk to you. Those trowel marks are in there because that shows you the shape of the ceiling. When you're using a flappy old, especially the perma-shaped stainless steel trowels, it doesn't talk to you. You don't get the trowel marks. It doesn't show you what needs to be flattened out. I mean, and those trowels are fine if you're banging out, you know, on a meterage rate, flat after house, and you need to get on as much as you can and fly across it. But if you've got something like this and you need to strain it up, carbon steel trowels are the way to go. They're a lot harder to work with. It forces you to deal with undulations and get things straight right from the outset. And if you do that right from the outset, when you start coming to trowel up and putting your top coat on, it's so much easier. Now, again, we'll just come back to the attention of this coving, and see where I've been a little bit messy here and it's come down onto the face. I mean, this coving has been quite difficult to keep clean because it's not the best coving, to be honest with you. But at this point, because the gear is so wet on the ceiling, I don't want to disturb this line too much. So I can't really run a brush across there or anything because I'll end up digging in. One of the best things I find at this point, just get your finger and your thumb like that, just hold it on the edge and just take that worst bit off. Again, I'm watching through the phone and trying to do this, so there you go. It's a lot better. There's a little bit of stain in there, but at this point, that's probably the best thing to do. As the ceiling starts picking up and we put our second coat on, then we can be quite a bit rougher with it and clean off the coving a lot better. But at this point, that's all we're going to do. Okay, so we've got that ceiling going. Like I say, we need to let that pick up. We need those air bubbles to kind of stabilise. There's no point in trying to lay this down now, because if you put another coat over it, it's just going to put more weight on it whilst it's still really wet. So we're going to let this pick up, and we'll probably give it another trowel before we even start thinking about putting a top coat over this. In the meantime, we had a little bit of plaster left over. So we've just knocked that back into this gauge to put this ceiling on, and if you remember, this ceiling had the silk on it, so it's not going to suck anywhere as near as fast as the other one. So hopefully that dirty water in there will pick it up and bring it in line. Shay's been picking up all these little bits of making good that mate has asked us to do, fill some sockets and that. So yeah, let that one pick up. now's the time to get this ceiling on. And like I say, we could have knocked up one big bucket and thrown it all at the same time, but this is all we've got to do today. So, you know, why rush? Why make your life too hard? You know, this one's going off just a little bit in front of this one. You never can tell, because like I say, this one's silked up. So, yeah, it might take ages, even though we've doped up the gear a little bit. Who knows? It's never an exact science. So, we'll just get on with it. It's exactly the same deal in here. I've literally just thrown it on. The time is 20 to 10, I think it is. So again, look at all these different trowel marks in there. They're contour lines. They're showing me what I need to sort out. So the difference on this ceiling, as we can see, no real detectable air bubbles. So yeah, there you go. So yes, same house, two different things happening going on. So yeah. We're going to turn straight back round and we're going to flatten this in right now. So there we go, 5 minutes later, we've just gone over it, and as you can see, we've managed to eliminate a lot of those trowel marks. Okay, and like I say, with the carbon steel, and you're able to eliminate the trowel marks with a carbon steel, then you'll know you're getting things flat. Well, that's what we're aiming here for. We're aiming for flat, we're not aiming for smooth. Okay, there is a difference. A lot of people can confuse smooth for flat. And like I say, PermaShape stainless steel trowel will not give you those trowel marks. It will lie to you. It will make you think it's all lovely and there's no trowel marks, the heel's not sticking in, the toe's not sticking in, because the whole thing's curved and bent. It's not showing you anything. Straight carbon steel trowel if you want to get things flat. 100%. So we've left this for a little bit. It's picked right up. It's quite thick. It's ready for another flatten. See, these air bubbles are still in there. We're gonna give it another flatten and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so 5 minutes later, we're giving it another flatten. There's still some air bubbles grinning through, but you know, I'm gonna let this pick up for a little bit longer before we think about putting the second coat on there. Because it's picked up quite a bit more, we can open the trowel up a lot more and be quite a bit rougher with it. So now, if there is anything around the coving that you need to deal with and clean off, now will be time to do it, because the plaster on the ceiling is a lot tougher, so you can be a bit rougher with cleaning that little face of coving off. But it's not too bad in here. There's a couple of nasty air bubbles that are appearing. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm pretty confident we'll get them down. Right, let's go and put some attention on the other ceiling. Okay, so this is the second ceiling. It's still quite a bit behind in setting time from the other ceiling. So I've just given it a second flattening, and I've done the little finger and thumb trick around the coving just to clean that off a bit. But it's certainly behaving a lot better than the other ceilings, so even though it's a little bit behind, I'm kind of getting the feeling that when we knock up to lay down to put the second coat on, we'll probably be able to knock up and use the same gear for both ceilings at the same time. So we'll knock it up in the bucket, we'll put the other ceiling on first, and then what's left in the bucket, I'll come and lay this down with the same gear. So probably only got one more bucket to knock up. So that's what that ceiling looks like with two flattens. It's gone a little bit further. It's not quite as wet as this one, and that's that one. See the difference? It's the air bubbles is more than anything else. Hardly any bit air bubbles in it. But the time is 20 past 11. This ceiling, I mean, we could lay this down now with the second coat, but the customer's just offers us a cup of tea, so we're just going to let it go that little bit further. This is kind of like it's just a little bit too wet maybe to lay down. You could do, but and this one, I wouldn't mind letting this go a little bit further, just so these nasty little air bubbles hold themselves together. And then, like I say, we'll knock up and we'll lay both the ceilings down with the same gear. Okay, the time is 20 to 12. I think we're ready to hit this now. There was a little bit of I cleaned the bucket out. Well, washed around the outside. I've used that dirty water just to send this second coat off a little bit. It was pretty much a bag per ceiling, so it went on quite thick. So we're going to knock up under a bag. Okay, so there we go. This was the ceiling with all the air bubbles and everything in it. I've literally just not flattened in, I've knocked up and I've laid this down. Okay, again with the 20-inch carbon, that's all we've used so far. And you can see, it's gone on a lot better than when we put the first coat on. And that's because we took time to flatten this in as good as we did. But of course, and you may notice, I mean, this is the only 2 ceilings we've got to do all day, so you know, we've had the time to flatten this in and take our time. If you know, really hard pushed and stuff, you have to work a lot faster. So yeah, that's what happens when you take the time to flatten in a bit more. Right, I am going to flatten this in and then we're going to put the other ceiling on. So there we go, we've just flattened in. This is that first ceiling again with all the air bubbles. And as you can see, by leaving that first coat to pick up as long as we did, this air bubble issue has been rectified already. You can see that we're still very wet. We managed to sort that out already. That is nothing we need to worry about anymore. We just need to see this ceiling home now. Okay, the time is 12 minutes past 12. Just got this second ceiling on and one flattened, and as you can see, it's still very wet. So we're back to the first ceiling that had all the air bubbles in it. I haven't taken a wet brush to it yet. I've just given it a second flatten because I've got time to do it. And I'm still using the 20-inch carbon steel trowel. So look, all these bubbles are gone. I mean, that's looking in quite good condition for 2 flattens. And the gear is still quite wet. See? So the reason we've been able to get this in such a good condition at this fairly early stage in the ceiling's life is because we took all that time into making that first coat flat and getting it right and letting those air bubbles to pick up. It's made this coat so much easier, and now it's just a walk home to the finish line. So that's what we're going to do. Whilst this is picking up, we're going to start getting tidied up and stuff. Not sure what the time is, but yeah, we shouldn't be late home today. Okay, so we're back on the ceiling that had all the air bubbles in, and I've just taken a wet brush to it. As you can see, I'm opening the trowel up a little bit. This is sort of residue that we're getting out of the ceiling now. And at this stage, I'm still kind of like pushing that back in. It does build up, and you have to clean it off your trowel every time. But if you do find any holes or anything that need to be rectified, you've still got that gear on your trowel that you can use to repair anything with. And also I like to use a 4-inch paintbrush there. It's just enough to deliver a little bit of water, just enough at this stage especially. And literally I'm brushing it on and licking it on, and at the same time I'm able to brush it across this coving line, okay, and tidying up that curve, that straight line there as we go. Now you may notice as well, because I'm still using the carbon steel trowel, see if I can catch it in the light. See, there's the beginning of a little bit of tiger striping going on there. We don't need to worry about that at the moment. What that is because we're using the carbon steel trowel, it's tearing some thicker particles away where there's potential to be ripples. We will be able to polish them out. Okay, so where that's torn like that, it's caught some thicker particles in the plaster, it's ripped them out, and it's just roughed that little bit of surface up. And the areas that aren't so matted and still shiny, I've got smaller particles in them. But like I say, don't worry about it at the moment. We will pick them up and we will polish them out. Right, let's go and have a look at the other ceiling. So we come back to the second ceiling we put on. Nice clean trowel, wet brush, there's a water bucket. You want to come over here, Shane, have a good look. So we've just given these 2 flattens in. This is the first time this ceiling's seen any water. See, we've got all this build up across. So because we're using a smaller, nicer wet brush, we're able to get in there and clean that off and not disturb the body of the plaster too much. I'm going to run a little bit of water through there. Don't need much water at this stage because it's still quite wet. A couple of little trowels. This is the sort of stuff we're getting out of there. When that builds up too much, we need to clean that off. But once we get it working for us, we can start using that and so like as we're brushing it in, just roughing up that very, very surface. Just coming over a couple of times, just pushing that back in there. And just working our way all the way across. Every time it feels like it needs a little bit, it's a little bit draggy. So it's catching some tiger stripes there, we don't have to worry about that too much at the moment. Again, if it is a little bit heavy, do that little finger and thumb trick just to clean anything that's really heavy off rather than keep going over it with the brush. Work ourselves all the way along. Push it back in, pull it back off. Okay? Yeah? Okay, so we're just carrying on, working our way across the ceiling into this corner here, just brushing that off. I mean, this coving's got to be painted anyway, so a little bit of staining from the plaster is not going to hurt anybody. So just enough water. We're not flicking the water on. Flicking the water on is another good way of creating some really bad tiger stripes. And we are, as you can see there, getting a little bit more residue there, back on. But because it's the fat from the trowel, look, we can deal with that so much easier. Okay, and look, just by hitting it there, that's how much we're getting off. We're going to stick with this. We're going to keep this on the trowel for the moment. And I'm going to come back to the next line. So yeah, we're going to brush these internals in there. A little bit of water on. It's going to come away. Opening the trowel up very, very slightly. Pushing that fat back in there. It's allowing us to get a real nice, even flatness over the entirety. Again, we're putting the pressure, kind of concentrate the pressure on this part of the trowel here. So opening up, run it back on, push it back in. Move along, a little bit of water, opening it up. Push it on, flattening it back in. A little bit of water there. Open up, this is the planing off bit. Plane it off, and we're using that fatty stuff and we're pushing it back in. I don't know if it's coming up on camera, I can see it from my own. See these bad tiger stripes coming? Can you see them? Mm-hmm. That's where you're hitting big particles. This is like the sludge, it's filling it in. This is the problem you get with using carbon steels. They do that. But we're not worried about this. I'm going to leave this for a while. As the ceiling picks up, this deficit is going to be so minimal, they're going to polish out. Right, see, we've got all that build up. It's time to clean that off and start again. Okay, and we're just going to continue doing this, working these ceilings until less and less gears coming out. And then right at the end, probably we're going to switch from the carbon steel trowel and we're going to switch to a stainless steel flexi trowel. Cool? Okay, just using the light there to really show up all the ripples and stuff that could potentially still be there, potential tiger stripes. It looks a lot worse than what it is, to be honest with you. It's just the way the light's catching it. If I come over this bit, let's see, this is why it's really difficult to show what's going on videos. Come across there, look how the light's catching it. Okay, at this point I'm putting down the 20-inch carbon steel and I'm swapping up for this old thing. It's a Rafina Flex 2. It's really old, it's really dirty. It's a very flexible trowel. I like the Flex 2s. They're not too flexible, they're not too stiff. So that is generally quite flat. I'm going to run over it with the Rafina. Now, using exactly the same methods with the 4-inch brush down there, doing exactly the same things I just showed you previously, and then we'll come back and I'll stand in exactly the same position and we'll have another look. So here we are, back in exactly the same position 5 minutes later. And you can see all those potential tiger stripes have gone. That's why it's a good idea to use the best of both worlds. We can switch to the stainless steel flexi now because we've done so much flattening in. with the carbon steel, the flexi just rides over it and it just closes the very, very top in. And it, you know, the stainless steel is so much smoother. It's what gives you this little sheen that everybody seems to love and thinks that makes a great plastered ceiling or wall. You could probably get away with this as it is. It's still a little bit early for my liking. So I'm going to go and do this to the other ceiling, and then I'm going to come back and probably give this another one and we'll have another look at it. And then we should be wrapped up for the day. Okay, so I'm just giving it another try. This is the sort of residue we're getting out now. It's all just more like cream than anything else. You see we're hardly getting any of the sludge out of there anymore, which is normally a good indication that your ceiling or your wall is done. So we're back in exactly the same place. Show up any discrepancies, there's some discoloration there as it's starting to set. But generally, it's a really, really nice ceiling if I do say so myself. I'm gonna lighten it up a bit more. Yeah, like I say, it's hard to show up on video. But like I say, this is a good position to stand in because the way that the light's reflecting, it shows up tiniest little discrepancies. Stayed pretty good all around the coving. A little bit of staining from the dirty water, but it's all going to need a sand back when the painter comes back in anyway, so that's nothing. So there we have it. What's the time, Shay?
It is 2. It is literally 2.
2 o'clock. So we got here at 8, unpacked. 2 o'clock, we're pretty much done. So as you can see, we've just inch brushed that coving line. So we've got a nice edge there for the painter. A little bit of staining, as you can see, look, there's all the brush marks from the paint. It's really hard to keep plaster out of that. And look at these sort of joints and stuff, it's because it's the foam stuff and it's quite old. I mean, look how rounded that is. It's quite a difficult one to keep clean, so there you go. Yeah, so this is the front room that wasn't, this is the ceiling that didn't have all those air bubbles in it. Time to go on.